All right, guys, let's cut through the noise. Everyone's talking about intermittent fasting like it's some kind of miracle cure. Skip breakfast, shrink your eating window, and suddenly you're supposed to burn fat like crazy. But here's the reality I've seen time and time again. Most people fail at it. They fast hard, they push through hunger, and they think they're doing everything right, yet the scale doesn't move, energy crashes, and they actually start losing muscle instead of fat. Now, fasting itself isn't the problem. In fact, fasting works beautifully. Your body gets a chance to lower insulin, clean up damaged cells, and start tapping into stored fat. But the moment that fast ends, that's where most people screw it up. They go straight for carbs, processed junk, or low-fat, healthy foods that send insulin through the roof. And guess what happens? That huge insulin spike shuts down fat burning, forces your body to store the next meal as fat, and completely reverses the progress you made during the fast. You go from burning fat to storing it in a matter of minutes. Here's the fix, and it's incredibly simple. When you break your fast, lead with protein, specifically high quality animal protein. Think steak, eggs, salmon, ground beef. Protein doesn't spike insulin the same way carbs do. It supports lean muscle, stabilizes blood sugar, and keeps you full for hours. When you do this, your metabolism stays elevated, your energy stays high, and your body keeps burning fat long after the meal. This isn't theory, it's physiology. I've seen it with athletes, patients, and everyday people who've been stuck for years. Once they switch to this insulin first correction, breaking fasts with real protein instead of sugar or grains, everything changed. The fat started dropping, strength came back, and the fasting finally worked the way it was supposed to. Most people start intermittent fasting because they want fast results. They hear that skipping breakfast melts fat, resets hormones, and boosts longevity. And yes, fasting can do all that when done right. But here's the hard truth. Most people completely botch the process. They undereat, break their fast with the wrong foods, and send their metabolism into survival mode instead of fat burning mode. I've seen it hundreds of times. People working harder, not smarter, and wondering why they're tired, hungry, and softer instead of leaner. The first major mistake is undereating. When you shrink your eating window, you're automatically cutting calories. But many people take it too far. They eat one tiny meal or snack thinking less food equals faster fat loss. What really happens is the opposite. When your body senses a severe drop in energy intake, it downshifts your metabolism to conserve fuel. Your thyroid output drops, your body starts breaking down muscle for energy, and fat loss stalls. You end up cold, tired, and craving sugar. Muscle mass is your metabolic engine. Lose that, and your fat burning capacity tanks. Then comes the carb bomb, breaking your fast with carbohydrates. This is where 99% of people kill their progress. After fasting, your insulin sensitivity is high, which is great if you feed your body the right nutrients. But the moment you dump in carbs, oatmeal, fruit smoothies, toast, or worse, junk snacks, insulin spikes through the roof. That insulin surge flips your body straight from fat burning to fat storing mode. Instead of using fat for fuel, you start locking it away. Your blood sugar swings, your energy crashes, and you're hungry again an hour later. Another major problem is poor nutrient quality. People think fasting gives them permission to eat anything within their window: pizza, processed snacks, protein bars, or seed oil soaked salads. But your body doesn't just care about when you eat, it cares what you eat. Processed foods full of refined carbs and industrial oils trigger inflammation, mess with gut health, and disrupt hormones like leptin and ghrelin, which control hunger and fullness. The result, you feel bloated, tired, and always chasing your next meal. You're not fueling recovery, you're just refilling with junk. And then there's inconsistency. Fasting isn't magic, it's a rhythm. Your body thrives on predictable cycles of eating and resting. But most people treat it like a random challenge. One day they skip breakfast. The next day they eat at noon, then they binge late at night. That inconsistency confuses your metabolism and hormones. Cortisol goes up, sleep quality drops, and your circadian rhythm gets thrown off. You can't expect stable fat loss when your eating patterns are all over the place. Your metabolism works best when it knows what to expect. What ties all these mistakes together is metabolic confusion, not the trendy version that people talk about online, but real biological confusion. Your body can't decide whether it's starving or fed, burning fat or storing it, building muscle or breaking it down. And when your body's confused, defaults to the safest state, storage. You conserve energy, hang on to fat, and slow everything down. It's your body's survival instinct kicking in, not a lack of willpower. To fix this, you need to understand that fasting isn't just about skipping meals. It's about managing insulin and nutrient timing. The people who succeed with fasting don't starve themselves. They fuel strategically. They they're fast with protein and fat, not sugar and starch. They eat enough to support recovery and maintain lean muscle. They stay consistent, same window, same pattern every day. Over time, their metabolism adapts in a good way. They burn fat between meals, stay sharp, and never feel deprived. So if your fasting results have stalled, don't blame fasting itself. Look at how you're doing it. Are you eating too little, breaking fast with carbs, skipping protein, eating junk because it fits the window? Those habits are what sabotage progress. Once you correct them, once you start treating fasting as a metabolic tool instead of a punishment, that's when the switch flips. Energy comes back, fat starts melting off, and you finally understand what fasting is supposed to feel like. When you fast, your body enters a completely different metabolic state. Insulin drops, fat oxidation ramps up, and your body starts burning stored fat for energy instead of glucose. This is the magic zone everyone's chasing: stable energy, mental clarity, and fat loss. But the second you break your fast, everything hinges on what happens next. That post-fast meal determines whether you stay in that fat burning mode or shut it off instantly. Most people get this moment wrong, and that's why their progress stalls. Here's how it works. During a fast, insulin levels are low. That's a signal to your body to unlock stored fat and use it for energy. Think of insulin like a switch. When it's low, fat is burning. When it's high, fat storage turns on. Now, after a fast, your body is incredibly insulin sensitive. That's not a bad thing. It means your cells are primed to absorb nutrients efficiently. But it also means that the first thing you eat has an amplified effect. If you break your fast with carbs, like fruit, oatmeal, or bread, you flood the bloodstream with glucose. The pancreas immediately responds by releasing a surge of insulin to shuttle that glucose into cells. That spike shuts down fat burning almost instantly. Your body can't burn fat and store it at the same time. It's one or the other. So the moment insulin rises, fat oxidation stops. And because you've been fasting, your glycogen stores are low, so your body takes that incoming glucose and locks it away, some in the liver and muscles, and the rest is fat. Instead of continuing to burn fat for fuel, you just told your metabolism to flip the switch back to storage. The result, you feel sluggish, your energy crashes a few hours later, and you're hungry again even though you just ate. This is why so many people complain that fasting doesn't work for them. They'll fast for 16 hours, then break it with a carb-heavy meal that sends insulin through the roof. They might as well have skipped the fast entirely, because that post-fast insulin spike undoes the very process they were trying to trigger. The fat burning window closes before it ever really opens. Now, let's dig deeper into what insulin actually does. Insulin isn't the villain. It's essential for life. It helps shuttle nutrients into cells, build muscle, and regulate blood sugar. The problem is timing and magnitude. After fasting, you want a slow, controlled insulin response, not a surge. A big insulin spike doesn't just stop fat burning. It also causes blood sugar to crash afterward. That's why people feel tired, moody, or hungry again an hour after eating. The roller coaster begins: spike, crash, crave, repeat. That's not fasting. That's metabolic chaos. Here's the smarter approach. When you break your fast with protein and fat instead of carbs, insulin rises gently. Protein triggers a mild insulin response, enough to drive amino acids into muscle without shutting down fat oxidation completely. Fat barely moves insulin at all. which helps keep your metabolism steady. A meal of steak, eggs, or salmon with some salt and water is the metabolic equivalent of landing a plane smoothly. Your body transitions from fasting to feeding without a crash. You stay in a fat-adapted state, energy remains stable, and hunger stays low. There's another layer most people miss: muscle preservation. When you fast, your body temporarily reduces protein synthesis. That's fine, but when you refeed, you need amino acids to kickstart muscle repair. If your post-fast meal lacks adequate protein, you miss that recovery window. Over time, that leads to muscle loss and metabolic slowdown. High-quality animal protein fixes this. It provides leucine and other key amino acids that reignite muscle protein synthesis and keep your metabolism high. So the takeaway is simple but critical. The most important part of fasting isn't the fasting, it's the refeeding. You can fast perfectly for 16, 20, even 24 hours, but if you break it wrong, you'll never see the results you want. The post-fast meal controls your insulin response, dictates whether you burn or store fat, and determines how you feel for the rest of the day. Prioritize protein, minimize carbs, and keep it real food, not processed junk. Do that, and fasting transforms from a temporary diet trick into a long-term metabolic weapon. When you break a fast, your body is like dry soil waiting for water. Whatever you feed it first soaks in deeply and sets the tone for everything that follows. That's why protein timing is the real secret behind successful fasting. What you eat first doesn't just fill you up, it shapes your hormonal response, dictates your energy, and decides whether your body preserves muscle or burns it for fuel. Prioritizing protein, especially animal-based protein, turns fasting from a calorie restriction tool into a muscle-preserving, fat-burning strategy that actually sustains your metabolism long-term. After fasting, your body's in a state of nutrient sensitivity. Insulin is low, glycogen is depleted, and your muscles are primed to absorb amino acids. If you take advantage of that window with protein, you send a powerful signal to your body: rebuild, repair, and stay strong. Amino acids, particularly leucine, trigger a process called muscle protein synthesis, which basically flips on the switch for muscle growth and recovery. When that switch stays active, your metabolism stays elevated because muscle tissue is metabolically expensive. It burns calories even when you're resting. The more lean muscle you maintain, the higher your daily energy expenditure, and the easier it is to stay lean without constantly dieting. Protein also stabilizes blood sugar better than any other macronutrient. When you break your fast with carbs, glucose spikes and crashes, leading to hunger and cravings. But protein digests slowly and triggers a mild, steady insulin response. That controlled release keeps your blood sugar balanced, your appetite suppressed, and your energy consistent. You don't get those post-meal crashes or the urge to snack an hour later. Instead, your body stays in a steady state of fat burning and energy stability. Now, not all protein is created equal. This is where a lot of people miss the mark. Plant-based proteins are incomplete. They lack certain essential amino acids, especially leucine, methionine, and lysine, that are critical for muscle repair and metabolic signaling. You'd have to eat massive amounts of beans, lentils, or soy to match what you get from a single serving of steak or eggs. And even then, plant proteins come packaged with anti-nutrients like lectins and phytates that interfere with absorption. That means your body doesn't actually get what it needs, even if you're eating what looks like enough on paper. Animal-based proteins, beef, eggs, fish, chicken, deliver the full spectrum of amino acids in the ratios your body recognizes and uses efficiently. They're also rich in key nutrients like B12, iron, zinc, and creatine, all of which support energy, metabolism, and hormonal balance. When you're fasting, those nutrients matter even more because you're compressing your eating window. You don't have time to waste on low quality protein that doesn't fully replenish your system. Every bite needs to count. Another big factor is satiety. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. It literally tells your brain, we're good, we're full. That's because it triggers hormones like peptide, YY, and GLP-1, which curb appetite naturally. When you lead your first meal with protein, you automatically reduce calorie intake later without even trying You stay full longer, snack less, and keep your eating window controlled without white knuckling it. This isn't about willpower, it's about biochemistry. There's also the thermic effect of food, something most people overlook. Your body burns more energy digesting and metabolizing protein than it does carbs or fat. Roughly 20-30% of the calories in protein are used just to process it. That means every time you eat protein, you're giving your metabolism a natural boost. When you combine that with fasting, you get a powerful one, two effect: extended fat oxidation from the fast, followed by a metabolic kick from the protein refeed. For anyone trying to lose fat while staying strong, this is the sweet spot. Fasting without protein leads to muscle loss and metabolic slowdown. Fasting with strategic protein timing builds resilience. Animal protein helps you recover faster, maintain strength, and keep insulin stable, all while continuing to burn fat. That's the difference between someone who looks skinny and tired and someone who looks lean, energetic, and solid. So the next time you end a fast, skip the smoothie bowl or plant-based shake. Go for real food: steak, eggs, salmon, or ground beef. Give your body the raw materials it actually needs to thrive. Protein first isn't just a tip. It's the foundation that makes fasting sustainable, powerful, and transformative. When you get that right, everything else, your energy, your metabolism, your fat loss, finally falls into place. The biggest mistake people make when they start fasting or cutting calories is assuming that all weight loss is good weight loss. It's not. When you lose muscle, you're not just losing tissue, you're losing the very engine that keeps your metabolism running. Muscle isn't just for aesthetics or strength, it's a living, metabolically active organ that dictates how efficiently your body burns energy. The more lean muscle you have, the higher your metabolic rate, the better your insulin sensitivity, and the more fat you burn both during fasting and feeding. That's why maintaining and building muscle through proper protein intake isn't optional. It's the foundation of long-term fasting success. When you fast, your body naturally shifts into a conservation mode. It lowers insulin, mobilizes fat stores, and increases fat oxidation. All great things. But if your protein intake is too low or your post-fast meal is poorly designed, the body starts scavenging amino acids from muscle tissue to make glucose for critical functions. Over time, that breakdown of muscle leads to a slower metabolism. You burn fewer calories at rest, your hormonal balance shifts, and your body becomes less efficient at burning fat. This is why many people hit plateaus or rebound after a few months of fasting. They've sacrificed muscle along the way without realizing it. Here's where strategic protein intake changes everything. When you consistently feed your body high quality animal protein, especially after fasting, you're providing the amino acids needed to protect and rebuild muscle tissue. Leucine, the key amino acid found abundantly in beef, eggs, and fish, activates MTR, the signal for muscle protein synthesis. Think of it as flipping on the rebuild switch. When that process is active, your body prioritizes repair and recovery instead of breakdown. That not only preserves muscle, but also keeps your metabolic rate high. Even as you lose fat, this becomes even more critical as body fat decreases. When you're leaner, your body has less stored energy to pull from. That's when it becomes more likely to break down muscle for fuel if protein isn't sufficient. Many people think they can just keep fasting longer or eating less to push through a plateau, but that approach backfires. Without enough protein, you're signaling scarcity, not strength. Your thyroid slows down, your cortisol rises, and your ability to oxidize fat diminishes. You end up feeling flat, weak, and stuck. The classic skinny, fat look that happens when muscle mass disappears beneath a lower body weight. On the flip side, when you preserve muscle during fasting, your metabolism stays resilient. Muscle tissue increases the number of mitochondria, the tiny energy factories inside your cells. More mitochondria mean more fat oxidation, more energy, and better glucose control. You burn fat more efficiently, not just during fasts, but around the clock. This is what separates sustainable fasting from short-term dieting. You're not just losing weight, you're training your body to burn fuel better. There's also a powerful hormonal component. Muscle tissue improves insulin sensitivity by acting as a glucose sponge. It pulls glucose out of the blood and stores it as glycogen without needing much insulin. That means the more muscle you have, the easier it is to stay insulin sensitive and metabolically flexible. You can handle refeeds better, you recover faster, and your fasting periods become more effective because your body knows how to switch between fuel sources without crashing. Another overlooked benefit of maintaining muscle is appetite regulation. Muscle mass increases resting energy expenditure, which means your body naturally demands more calories to maintain its basic functions. That increased demand stabilizes hunger hormones like leptin and ghrelin, making fasting more comfortable. Instead of white-knuckling your way through hunger, your body runs efficiently on fat and ketones. You feel steady, not starved. To achieve this, protein quality and timing matter. You need around 30 to 50 grams of high quality animal protein in your first meal after fasting to maximize the anabolic response. That could be a few eggs and steak or a serving of salmon or ground beef. Add a pinch of salt, hydrate well, and let your body use those amino acids to rebuild what fasting broke down. It's not about eating more often, it's about eating smart. The goal isn't to fast longer, it's to fast better. That means protecting the muscle that drives your metabolism and keeps fat loss efficient. The people who thrive on fasting year after year aren't the ones who starve themselves. They're the ones who understand this muscle metabolism connection. They break their fast with protein, they lift or move regularly, and they treat muscle as their most valuable metabolic asset, because it is. Without muscle, fasting becomes a slow grind. With muscle, it becomes a sustainable lifestyle that keeps you lean, strong, and metabolically unstoppable. The simplest change often delivers the biggest results. When it comes to fasting and fat loss, that change is what you eat when you break your fast. Most people think the magic happens during the fast, the hours you go without food, the discipline, the hunger control. But the real transformation starts when you eat again. That moment determines whether your body continues burning fat or immediately flips back to storing it. And the Fei-1 trick that separates success from frustration is this: break your fast with protein-rich, carnivore-style foods. When you end your fast with steak, eggs, or salmon, you send your metabolism a completely different signal than if you ended it with carbs or low-fat health foods. You're telling your body, we're fed, we're safe, and we have the raw materials to rebuild. That single signal stabilizes insulin, controls hunger, and keeps your fat-burning machinery running efficiently. Protein and fat digest slowly, which means you don't get the blood sugar spikes that cause energy crashes and cravings later. You stay full, your appetite naturally drops, and your next meal comes later without you even trying to restrict. This isn't just about calories, it's about hormones. Fasting lowers insulin, but if you break your fast with the wrong foods, that insulin shoots right back up and shuts off fat oxidation. Protein, especially from animal sources, keeps that rise gentle and controlled. It also boosts glucagon, a fat-burning hormone that works in opposition to insulin. When glucagon is active, your body keeps pulling from stored fat for fuel even after you've eaten. That's the sweet spot, fed yet still burning fat. At the same time, animal protein helps balance the hormones that control hunger and satiety. It triggers peptide YY, cholecystokinin, and GLP-1, the same hormones that tell your brain, I'm full. That means you don't have to fight hunger or cravings. Contrast that with breaking your fast with carbs, cereal, fruit, or oatmeal, which lights up dopamine, spikes insulin, and sends you hunting for your next meal within hours. The difference in how you feel is night and day, and it's not just about feeling full. Protein feeds the muscle tissue that drives your metabolism. After a fast, your body's primed to absorb amino acids for repair. Steak and eggs provide the full spectrum of essential amino acids, especially leucine, which triggers muscle protein synthesis. The more efficiently you rebuild muscle, the more energy your body burns at rest. That's why people who eat more protein during fasting actually burn more fat. Their bodies become metabolic furnaces. Let's talk practicality. You don't need complicated recipes or supplements. A few simple options make all the difference. A ribeye steak cooked in butter, a few eggs with salt, or a piece of grilled salmon. That's all it takes. These foods give you protein, healthy fats, electrolytes, and micronutrients in one shot. You don't get the bloating, energy swings, or digestive distress that often come from plant-based or processed meals. Plus, they're naturally satiating. You can eat until you're satisfied, not stuffed, and still stay in a fat-burning state. One of the biggest benefits of this protein first approach is consistency. When you break your fast this way, you naturally maintain stable energy and appetite throughout the day. You don't need constant snacks. You don't hit that afternoon crash. Your fasting window becomes easier to maintain because your body isn't riding the roller coaster of blood sugar highs and lows. Over time, your metabolism adapts. Your body learns to rely on fat for fuel, not sugar. That's when fasting stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling effortless. There's also a psychological advantage. When you eat steak or eggs after a fast, you feel grounded, not deprived. You're feeding your body real nutrition, something primal and satisfying. That's why people who switch to this approach often say they no longer feel like they're dieting. It's not about punishment or restriction. It's about fueling the body the way it's designed to be fueled. If you've been fasting but struggling with rebound hunger, low energy, or stubborn fat, this one change can completely flip the script. The timing, the macronutrient balance, the satiety, everything improves when protein comes first. It's simple, it's sustainable, and it works for every metabolic type. Once you make this your standard, break the fast with protein, not carbs, your results compound. You burn fat more efficiently, preserve lean muscle, and stay energized all day. The protein first trick isn't just a tweak. It's the difference between fasting that drains you and fasting that transforms you. Because when you feed your body what it actually needs, it rewards you with strength, clarity, and a metabolism that runs like a machine. If you've been stuck with fasting, feeling drained, hungry, or plateaued, applying the protein first strategy correctly is what changes everything. This isn't about pushing yourself harder or fasting longer. It's about fasting smarter. The right structure, timing, and food choices make fasting not just effective, but sustainable for the long term. Once you understand the rhythm, when to fast, how to refeed, and what to prioritize, your body starts working with you, not against you. For most people, the ideal fasting duration sits between 16 to 20 hours. That window is long enough to lower insulin, activate fat burning, and clean up damaged cells through autophagy, but short enough to maintain performance, strength, and hormonal balance. You don't need to chase 3-day fasts or starve yourself. Consistency beats intensity every time. Pick a window that fits your lifestyle. For example, eating between noon and 8 p.m. and stick with it. That consistency keeps your circadian rhythm and metabolism stable. The most critical moment, though, is how you break your fast. This single step makes or breaks your results. After fasting, your insulin sensitivity is heightened, meaning your body is primed to absorb whatever you feed it. If you start with carbs or processed food, you spike insulin, crash energy, and instantly halt fat burning. But if you start with protein and fat, you stabilize everything. Insulin rises gently, glucagon stays active, and your body continues burning fat while shifting back into feeding mode smoothly. Here's what that looks like in practice. Your first meal should focus on animal-based protein and natural fats. Steak, eggs, salmon, sardines, ground beef, these are all perfect. Add a little salt and water for electrolytes, and that's it. You don't need vegetables, fruit, or carbs right away. In fact, by delaying carbs until later in your eating window, you give your metabolism more time to stay in a fat burning zone. Once you've anchored your first meal with protein, your second meal can be more flexible. Maybe some carbohydrates if you're active, or more meat and eggs if you're focused on deeper fat loss. A simple routine might look like this: wake up and hydrate with water and electrolytes. Sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Stay fasted until midday. When it's time to eat, break your fast with about 40 to 60 grams of animal protein. That's roughly 6 to 8 ounces of steak or salmon, or 4 to 6 eggs. Pair it with a bit of fat, butter, egg yolks, or fatty cuts of meat and nothing else. Wait at least 2 to 3 hours before your next meal. When you do eat again, go for another round of high quality protein with or without some low carb sides depending on your goals. This structure keeps you full, energized, and metabolically flexible. The key is not to overcomplicate it. You don't need fancy supplements, pre-workouts, or elaborate meal plans. You just need to stay consistent with the protein first approach every time you break your fast. Within a week or two, most people notice major changes. Hunger stabilizes, bloating disappears, and energy levels rise. By week 3 or 4, fat loss becomes steady and effortless. Your body learns that it's not in a state of deprivation. It's being fueled efficiently, and there's real world proof everywhere. I've seen people who struggled for years with fasting finally start losing fat once they applied this one adjustment. A 45-year-old man who had plateaued after months of fasting dropped 10 pounds of body fat in 6 weeks. No extra cardio, no supplements, just breaking his fast with steak and eggs instead of smoothies. A woman in her 30s who constantly battled fatigue during fasting switched to salmon and salt water as her first meal. Within 2 weeks, her energy was stable all day, and she stopped rebounding at night. These results aren't from starvation or extreme discipline. They're from metabolic alignment. When you feed your body what it needs at the right time, it rewards you. Insulin stays balanced, muscle is preserved, and fat continues to burn even when you're not fasting. You don't experience the yo-yo effect because your metabolism isn't crashing, it's thriving. Safety also comes from balance. Fasting too aggressively or under eating protein can lead to hormonal issues, fatigue, and muscle loss. That's why this strategy focuses on nourishment, not restriction. Stay hydrated, get adequate electrolytes, and aim for roughly 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass each day. That ensures recovery and keeps your metabolism humming. Over time, this becomes a lifestyle, not a diet. You'll eat less often, but with more satisfaction. You'll stop chasing hunger and start feeling steady, strong, and in control. That's what fasting is supposed to feel like. When you combine consistency, proper timing, and animal-based protein, you're not just losing weight, you're rebuilding your metabolism from the ground up. That's how you create fat loss that actually lasts.